Brian Patterson is P4 on mediums. Eric Boma from Germany is P12 on softs. David Forsyth from Ireland is P13 on mediums. Sam Graham is P8 on mediums. Brian Patterson is P2. David Forsyth is P13. Sam Graham is P9. Glenfield from United Kingdom is P8 on softs. David Forsyth is P13. Sam Graham is P11. David Forsyth is P13. Nick Carney is P4 on softs, 0.3 seconds ahead of Philip Didman. Eric Boma. David Forsyth is P14, 0.4 seconds behind Simon Cham. Nick Carney is P5, 0.3 seconds behind Philip Didman. Eric Boma is P9, battling Glenfield. Nick Carney is P4, 0.1 seconds ahead of Philip Didman. Glenfield is P9, 0.4 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. John Astrop from New Zealand is P5 on mediums, battling Philip Didman. Philip Didman from Germany is P9 on mediums, 0.1 seconds behind Rene Robertson. Mark Scott from Norway is P11 on softs, battling David Kelsall. Glenfield is P7, 0.1 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. Eric Boma is P5, 0.4 seconds ahead of John Astrop. John Astrop is P7, battling Rene Robertson. David Forsyth is P12 0.6 seconds behind Simon Champ. Sam Graham is P16 1.3 seconds behind Bruce Hardwick. Eric Boma is P5 0.4 seconds behind Nick Carney. Sam Graham is P16 0.5 seconds behind Bruce Hardwick. Eric Boma is P4 0.2 seconds ahead of Nick Carney. Nick Carney is P5 0.3 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. Eric Boma is P4 0.4 seconds behind Brian Patterson. Brian Patterson is P4 0.9 seconds behind Eric Boma. David Forsyth is P12 1.8 seconds behind Simon Champ. Brian Patterson is P4 0.3 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. Richard Ogden is P13 0.3 seconds ahead of David Kelsall. Ian Morton is P17. Brian Patterson is P4 0.3 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. Glenfield is P6 0.1 seconds ahead of Nick Carney. Brian Patterson is P4 0.3 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. Glenfield is P6 0.1 seconds ahead of Nick Carney. John Astrop is P8 0.3 seconds behind Glenfield. David Forsyth is P12 1.0 seconds behind Simon Champ. Bruce Hardwick entering the pits after 5 laps on softs is P17. Glenfield is P7 0.6 seconds behind Nick Carney. John Astrop is P8 0.5 seconds ahead of Philip Dittman. Glenfield is P7 0.4 seconds behind Nick Carney. John Astrup is P11 battling Simon Champ. Sam Markham from Zimbabwe is P2 on softs 4.7 seconds behind Daniel Handke. John Astrup is P10 0.8 seconds ahead of Simon Champ. Glenfield is P7 1.1 seconds ahead of Philip Didman. John Astrup is P10 0.7 seconds ahead of Simon Champ. Richard Ogden is P13 0.1 seconds behind David Forsyth. Eric Boma is P3. Mark Scott is P11 1.1 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Glenfield is P7 1.0 seconds ahead of Philip Didman. Mark Scott entering the pits after 7 laps on softs is P13. Richard Ogden is P12 0.1 seconds behind David Forsyth. Glenfield is P7 1.5 seconds ahead of Philip Didman. John Astrup is P9 2.2 seconds ahead of Simon Champ. Richard Ogden is P12 1.2 seconds behind David Forsyth. Brian Patterson is P5 1.1 seconds ahead of Nick Carney. Nick Carney is P6 1.1 seconds behind Brian Patterson. Brian Patterson is P5 0.8 seconds ahead of Nick Carney. Philip Didman is P8 2.1 seconds behind Glenfield. Richard Ogden is P12 2.1 seconds behind David Forsyth. Brian Patterson is P5 1.3 seconds ahead of Nick Carney. Glenfield is P7 1.2 seconds behind Nick Carney. Richard Ogden is P12 1.6 seconds behind David Forsyth. Glenfield is P6 1.6 seconds ahead of Philip Dittman. Mark Scott is P16. Glenfield is P6 1.6 seconds ahead of Philip Dittman. Glenfield entering the pits after 9 laps on softs is P6. Ian Morton is P15. Mark Scott is P16. John Astrop is P8 4.2 seconds behind Nick Carney. Richard Ogden entering the pits after 9 laps on softs is P13. David Forsyth is P10 4.0 seconds behind Simon Champ. John Astrop is P8 4.4 seconds behind Nick Carney. Rene Robertson is P4 on softs. Richard Ogden is P16 0.9 seconds behind Mark Scott. Eric Boma is P3 4.2 seconds behind Sam Markham. Daniel Handke from Germany is P1 on softs. Richard Ogden is P16 1.8 seconds behind Mark Scott. Simon Champ is P9 on softs. Mark Scott is P15 1.6 seconds behind Ian Morton. Richard Ogden is P16 2.3 seconds behind Mark Scott. Mark Scott is P15 0.5 seconds behind Ian Morton. Daniel Handke entering the pits after 11 laps on softs is P1. Richard Ogden is P16 1.0 seconds behind Ian Morton. Sam Markham is P1. Richard Ogden is P16 0.8 seconds behind Ian Morton. David Forsyth is P12 0.4 seconds ahead of Glenn Field. Simon Champ is P9. David Forsyth entering the pits after 11 laps on mediums is P13. Eric Boma is P2 3.8 seconds behind Sam Markham. Sam Graham is P11 1.6 seconds ahead of Glenn Field. Simon Champ is P9. Sam Graham is P11 1.4 seconds ahead of Glenn Field. Mark Scott is P13. Richard Ogden is P14 0.6 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Nick Carney entering the pits after 12 laps on softs is P7. Brian Patterson is P4 3.0 seconds ahead of Daniel Handke. Mark Scott is P13. Simon Champ entering the pits after 12 laps on softs is P9. David Kelsall entering the pits after 12 laps on softs is P10. Brian Patterson is P4 3.1 seconds ahead of Daniel Handke. Philip Dittman is P6. Sam Graham entering the pits after 12 laps on mediums is P12. Richard Ogden is P14 1.4 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Eric Boma is P2 3.7 seconds behind Sam Markham. Eric Boma entering the pits after 13 laps on softs is P2. Ian Morton is P16. Brian Patterson is P4 0.2 seconds ahead of Daniel Handke. David Kelsall is P10 on softs 0.9 seconds ahead of Simon Champ. Ian Morton entering the pits after 12 laps on softs is P16. John Astrop entering the pits after 13 laps on mediums is P7. Brian Patterson is P3 0.1 seconds ahead of Daniel Handke. Richard Ogden is P13 0.7 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Daniel Handke is P3 on mediums 0.6 seconds behind Rene Robertson. Richard Ogden is P13 0.2 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Daniel Handke is P2 0.2 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. Brian Patterson is P4 battling Rene Robertson. Nick Carney is P8 1.9 seconds behind Glenn Field. Brian Patterson is P4 0.2 seconds behind Rene Robertson. Glenn Field is P7 1.8 seconds ahead of Nick Carney. Brian Patterson is P4 0.3 seconds behind Rene Robertson. David Kelsall is P12 0.6 seconds behind Simon Champ. Eric Boma is P5 0.1 seconds ahead of Philip Dittman. David Kelsall is P12 0.7 seconds behind Simon Champ. Glenn Field is P7 0.7 seconds ahead of Nick Carney. Richard Ogden is P14 0.8 seconds behind David Forsyth. Sam Graham is P14 on softs 0.2 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Brian Patterson is P4 0.1 seconds behind Rene Robertson. Glenn Field is P7 0.3 seconds ahead of Nick Carney. John Astrop is P9 on softs 2.2 seconds behind Nick Carney. Sam Graham is P14 2.6 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Brian Patterson is P4 0.3 seconds behind Rene Robertson. David Kelsall is P12 1.0 seconds behind Simon Champ. Sam Graham is P14 0.5 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Eric Boma is P5 0.6 seconds behind Brian Patterson. Ian Morton entering the pits after 3 laps on softs is P17. Sam Markham entering the pits after 17 laps on softs is P1. Brian Patterson is P4, 0.4 seconds behind Rene Robertson. Sam Markham is P2, 0.4 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. Eric Boma is P4 battling Brian Patterson. Brian Patterson is P4, 0.1 seconds behind Rene Robertson. Eric Boma is P2, 0.7 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. David Forsyth is P15 on softs. Brian Patterson is P5, 0.8 seconds ahead of Philip Didman. Sam Markham is P4, 0.1 seconds behind Rene Robertson. David Forsyth is P15. Rene Robertson entering the pits after 18 laps on softs is P4. Brian Patterson entering the pits after 18 laps on mediums is P5. Richard Ogden is P13, 2.3 seconds ahead of Sam Graham. David Forsyth is P15. Richard Ogden is P13, 1.5 seconds ahead of Sam Graham. Glenfield entering the pits after 9 laps on softs is P7. David Kelsall is P12, 0.3 seconds behind Simon Champ. Eric Boma is P2, 1.4 seconds ahead of Sam Markham. David Kelsall is P12, 0.4 seconds behind Simon Champ. Eric Boma is P2, 0.4 seconds ahead of Sam Markham. David Kelsall is P11, 0.1 seconds ahead of Simon Champ. Philip Didman entering the pits after 19 laps on mediums is P4. Simon Champ is P12, 1.2 seconds behind David Kelsall. Richard Ogden is P13, 4.8 seconds behind Simon Champ. Simon Champ is P12 1.4 seconds behind David Kelsall. Eric Boma is P3 0.6 seconds behind Sam Markham. David Kelsall is P11 3.1 seconds ahead of Simon Champ. Eric Boma is P3 0.5 seconds behind Sam Markham. David Kelsall is P11 2.8 seconds ahead of Simon Champ. Sam Markham is P2 0.7 seconds ahead of Eric Boma. Bruce Hardwick entering the pits after 13 laps on mediums is P16. Eric Boma is P3 0.9 seconds behind Sam Markham. David Kelsall is P11 3.1 seconds ahead of Simon Champ. Eric Boma is P3 1.7 seconds behind Sam Markham. Sam Graham is P14 0.9 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Sam Markham is P2 1.3 seconds behind Daniel Handke. Mark Scott is P10. Eric Boma is P3 4.4 seconds behind Sam Markham. Sam Markham is P2 0.5 seconds behind Daniel Handke. Eric Boma is P3 4.5 seconds behind Sam Markham. Sam Graham is P14 0.7 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Sam Markham is P2 0.4 seconds behind Daniel Handke. Sam Graham is P14 0.6 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Sam Markham is P2 0.1 seconds behind Daniel Handke. Sam Graham is P14 0.7 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Bruce Hardwick is P17 on mediums. Eric Boma entering the pits after 9 laps on softs is P3. Sam Graham is P14 0.7 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Sam Markham is P1 1.2 seconds ahead of Daniel Handke. Sam Graham is P14 0.4 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Eric Boma is P3 2.4 seconds ahead of Philip Didman. Nick Carney is P8. Sam Graham is P14 1.7 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Mark Scott is P10 2.5 seconds ahead of David Kelsall. David Forsyth is P14 0.5 seconds ahead of David Kelsall. Nick Carney is P8. Richard Ogden is P12 0.4 seconds ahead of David Forsyth. Sam Graham is P15 2.3 seconds behind David Kelsall. Philip Didman is P4 1.7 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. Richard Ogden is P13 1.4 seconds behind David Forsyth. Philip Didman is P4 1.0 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. Bruce Hardwick is P17. Philip Didman is P4 0.3 seconds ahead of Rene Robertson. Eric Boma is P3. Philip Didman is P5 0.1 seconds behind Rene Robertson. Richard Ogden is P13 2.2 seconds behind David Forsyth. Nick Carney is P8. Brian Patterson is P6 on softs 0.9 seconds behind Philip Didman. Glenfield is P9. David Kelsall is P15. Brian Patterson is P6, 0.1 seconds behind Philip Didman. Eric Boma is P3. Brian Patterson is P6, 0.8 seconds ahead of Philip Didman. Glenfield is P9, 4.9 seconds behind Nick Carney. John Astrup is P7, 1.4 seconds behind Philip Didman. Eric Boma is P3. Nick Carney is P8, 3.5 seconds ahead of Glenfield. John Astrup is P7, 0.3 seconds behind Philip Didman. The leader has just finished the race. Sam Markham is P1. Nick Carney is P8. Glenfield is P9. Daniel Handke is P2. Mark Scott is P10. Ian Morton is P16. Sam Graham is P14. Richard Ogden is P13. Simon Champ is P11. Eric Boma is P3. Mark Scott is P10. John Astrup is P7. David Forsyth is P12. Rene Robertson is P4. Richard Ogden is P13. Sam Graham is P14. Brian Patterson is P6. Sam Graham is P14. John Astrup is P7. Philip Didman is P5. David Kelsall is P15. John Astrup is P7.